Okay, I think we have a good crowd here. Let's get started. So welcome everyone to this first of a new series. We call it Keep It Real with AI, and it's a jam series. So we're going to be running those every month. We kind of run a beta test of that in August, in the August Munch and Learn, if you remember. We had a panel of AI experts. We had a host, Audrey was there already. And we thought there was, we got good feedback, and we thought we're going to run this into a series, a monthly series, and this is kind of the first one. So welcome to the AI Jam. The first session is going to be, well, let me first do a quick intro about the HP developer community. We host these in the developer community, which you already know. As you know, my name is Didier. We've been running this intro for the last 3 years, so you probably had enough of it. But anyway, let me make it quick. As you know, the developer community runs a number of programs. One of them is called the Munch and Learn. This is like a monthly series we started 3 years ago. It's more like thought leadership type of discussion webinar. It's vendor and product agnostic in most cases. We have a session coming up October 16 on quantum computing done by HP Labs and a company called Classic, partner of HP. So check it out. It's not the replay. The session is October 16th, so this month. We have a calendar page for the Munch and Learn where you can find all the upcoming sessions and all the replay from the previous sessions through our YouTube channel. I know my colleague Frederic will put all the links in the Q&A, so check the Q&A for the links to this session. We then created a second program called the Meetups. We started this 2 years ago, and these go down more in depth into technology. So we dive into one particular open source or one particular product into more details. We have an upcoming session in October, and this is always, the Meetups are always the last Wednesdays of every month. So October 13th will be a session delivered by NVIDIA. And you can register for that. Again, Frederic will dump the links in the Q&A as an answer to the question, the number one question. And then we have this new series we are starting. As I said, it's a monthly series. We're going to run it as a panel with a panel of experts. The session will be, the first one will be this one. And then we have one in November and December. We know the dates, which I forgot now, but the sessions are not entirely defined, so we don't have the title yet. So we'll keep you posted for that. Another thing that you can take a look at from the developer community is the so-called workshops on demand. This is a good way to learn, similar to webinar, except you're getting to do the work. So we have a framework that we call the workshops on demand. We have a catalog of about 30 plus workshops there, all of which are delivered through Jupyter notebooks. They are available 24/7 and they are free to use. So it's available to anyone. You can use that to deliver content to partners, to customers. You can use that for yourself. We've seen also people use that to train students at university. So take a look. If you take a look, provide us with feedback. It's a great way for us to know what's missing, what we should be looking at. We are working, to tell you the truth, we are working on some AI content for the catalog as well. If you want to know more about the dev community, take a look. Our website is developer.hp.com. We run a monthly newsletter that you can subscribe to. We have a dedicated Slack workspace where you can ask questions about our products and our technologies. So feel free to go and ask questions there. If you're with HPE, feel free to join and help customers sorting out issues. We have a Twitter X account that you can follow as well. And this is a direct link to the workshops on demand. Again, the links are in the Q&A for you. You can also scan that QR code to get all these links in one place. And that's it for me. I hand it over to Audrey to be our host for today's panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Audrey Scribner, and we'll be hosting our Keeping It Real with AI Jam series today. This is the second of its kind, as Didier said, in a monthly cadence. Our whole goal here is to have an interactive session that allows for us to have a conversation amongst ourselves and with you all on how we're keeping AI a reality and taking some of the hype out for all of you as practitioners who are actually getting the job done. So I'm really pleased today to have a really interesting group of colleagues with me. Chad, Hayden, and Anthony individually have something in common in that every time I get on a call with them, I learn something new. And I come away thinking, wow, that was fascinating. I'm going to go read more about that. So I want everyone to introduce themselves. We asked them to pick 3 words to describe themselves. So go ahead and do that in your intro, but then also tell us a little bit about your role at HPE and then how you got to that role. So Chad, I'll hand it over to you. And I want you to make sure you tell us what life-changing means in your description.
Yeah, especially when you have something like expletive. I have some expletive this morning about our networking in our San Jose office. We'll save that for another webinar, though. That's why I was a little delayed getting on. I apologize. Yeah, so Chad Smicky, I'm the AI CTO for North America for all of our industry verticals. What the heck does that mean? I know there's a lot of people putting AI in their titles, but I've actually worked probably over the last 12 years on machine learning projects with customers from every type of industry vertical out there that we now saw grew into be Gen AI and AI workloads, especially out of the big data days, is where we saw a lot of those batch-based workloads come from. So expletive, it's kind of a joke, but it's more of I kind of think AI is becoming a curse word now. It's expletive. I think it's becoming a curse word in people's budget plannings and is this real or not? I don't believe it. And it becomes the hype cycle, just like if you remember when you had any family members that didn't know what the cloud was, and then all of a sudden they said, "Oh, it's in the cloud." You've got family members, and you got grandma saying, talking about AI. We've reached full end of the hype cycle all the way out to the consumer. Life changing. This technology really, really is life changing. It really can do a lot, and it can do a lot for you very quickly, especially these large language models. And people don't believe it until they have their own aha moment. For me, mine was I'm very technical. I know what it can do, but I've never had it actually go and read my writing. So I was in a workshop that we did with a partner, and we were writing down these worksheets, and I said, ChatGPT, we were using it, and I said, go create a business plan out of this worksheet. And what impressed me the most is it could read my writing. So for me, the life-changing moment was it could read my chicken scratch. I knew it could generate images. I knew it could do all the summarization. I knew it could take in so many different data sets and do something with it. But I had no idea it could read my writing. So that was life-changing for me. I don't know about y'all. So that was my aha moment that I had this year. And then the delays I'm seeing with folks that are being very, very cautious about it. It's no longer time to delay. If you're seeing that in your organizations, your delay is going to probably be your demise. I'm being pretty brutally honest here. So those are my 3 words. That's why I picked them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard similar things of, oh, it's not proven yet. We don't know. Let's wait and see. We'll let others go first, and we'll kind of follow behind. So yeah, similar kind of 2 sides of the camp out there, really. Hayden, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, I'm Hayden Barnes. I work on open source AI and ML developer platform tools here at HPE. My background is actually in ops, in dev tooling, and open source community on projects like Ubuntu and Rancher, which you may have heard of. I'm relatively new to AI ML in the past couple of years. I'm still learning, and I'm expanding my existing ops and dev experience to ML, which I imagine a lot of existing devs and sysadmins are doing as well. Thankfully, I have fantastic colleagues here at HPE who can answer my deep learning questions, like what really is a transformer? Like what is happening there? But so my 3 keywords. First was nascent. I sincerely believe that we are in the dial-up stage of AI ML. Like we are that early. Like we're seeing some cool things, but and I'll come back to this. We have no idea where this is going. My next keyword was open source. Of course, I'm a big open source advocate, but we have to point out that AIML exists today in our tech ecosystem largely thanks to open source. Things like PyTorch, TensorFlow, the tooling we build here at HPE, things like LangChain, Onyx, which I'm going to talk about later, all open source. And those are those components that we build AI solutions on are going to continue driving AI ML. So being familiar with the open source AI ML ecosystem is going to be an advantage in building your own solutions and continuing to push the technology. And finally, the transformative, not unlike Chad's life-changing. We can only guess where ML is going to be. Going back to my dial-up analogy, I think, and not to date myself too much, we're in the CompuServe or Prodigy phase. And we have no idea where this is going. I saw today someone used ML to generate an entire podcast just from their Git commits on their projects from GitHub. I mean, there's just wild things that we see happening in the broader community with users of HPE's open source tooling that I just never thought possible. So I'm really excited about where this is going.
Yeah, Hayden, when I first learned about Windows subsystem Linux, yes, finally, it's a very exciting moment. And then I come to find
I'm
out.
holding out on that one. I'm a Linux guy through and through, man. I don't know. I can't do it. Can't
And
do it.
then I
Well,
thought, oh, Hayden had something to do with that. So, I mean, it doesn't get
Yeah.
more open source than that. Then
WSL comes up a lot. So,
Yeah.
actually later on I might show off a little something running on
Okay.
WSL.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll come back to it. We'll come back to it.
I hope you do. Hope you do. And Anthony.
Hey, good morning. Anthony Delicoli. Let me give a little bit of background on why I'm actually here on this panel. I've spent most of my waking and sometimes my sleeping hours building small companies, 4 startups and 3 bootstraps. So if anybody's built the bootstrap before, the set of constraints you have in terms of building both teams and then ultimately building the right thing to solve the right big problems. And so I get really excited about when we're at the beginning of something like we are today. I'm not going to use an analogy. I think there's a number of them already thrown out. Hayden, I enjoyed the last one. But if I go to my 3 words right away now, I'll close with why I'm at HPE. Despite where the tech is and what we need to prove in terms of its efficacy, there's so many creative people now that are gathering around it. And when you have creative people across different domains gathering around something and trying to better and solve a problem, I think really amazing things are going to happen. So that's what I'm excited about. And the lifelong dream I've been focused on is how to solve for wellness at the end of the day. 2 failed startups later, I continue to be on that journey of trying to solve for what I've been calling a calendar app or a wellness companion app. And I've had a couple of aha moments as we've seen a lot of our wearables. I'm sure everybody's wearing a wearable on today's call, learning more about you and making recommendations. And a couple of months ago, I fell ill with COVID, like a lot of us got caught up in COVID. And it took me about a month or so to get back sort of into the gym and back to exercising. And on my first bout back in the gym, my watch actually told me that I'm not at full capacity. This is the toughest workout you've had in the last 60 days, and that I should be taking it somewhat at half mast, right? So I think a lot of us have had those aha moments, where our wearables or our ambient intelligent devices around us are starting to provide more and more, companion-like recommendations. And I'm just excited about where this is going to go, and particularly how we're going to solve for big problems around healthcare and personalized solutions around healthcare, and specifically, wellness. How I got to HPE, it's a little bit of a blur at this point. But I operate out of what is our office of the CTO. I work pretty exclusively on, I think, a pretty cool job. I get to work with customers on what's next. So we host a small innovation and incubation team in the office of CTO under Fidelma. And we get to build and experiment with our end customers, and ultimately deliver net new capabilities to the company, and ideally land them in our customers' sites. I think when I came over, and I know some of you I've shared this little anecdote, but when I've come over, I was scratching my head. I said, how can I provide value here at HPE? What can I possibly be differentiated? And the manager that hired brought me over asked me to make sure I make as many people uncomfortable as possible. So I'm going to try to do that on this call as well, both internally with our developers and our product teams as we challenge ourselves on how to sort of implement something differently or more effectively, and then with our customers on how roles and responsibilities are changing in the IT spaces, and ultimately how they're looking at partnerships with vendors differently, all of which is uncomfortable. For a startup guy like me, just ripe for creativity and innovation. So I'm excited to continue this journey on this panel, Audrey. Look forward to today's banter, right?
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, I like that word, Anthony. Artificial intelligence is uncomfortable. And I think that that's where we're at too, is that it's uncomfortable for people, and it is pervasive. So we're seeing it across all industries. We're seeing it in healthcare, and everyone is in the action seat here. People are coming up with use cases, and that's why we're here today, right? The name of our session today is Cool AI Use Case, Now What? So we're hoping that you have some kind of cool AI use case, and if you don't, that we'll share some that we've come up with as well. But everybody gets to be in the seat to come up with a new way to apply this technology to help them with their health, with their planning, with their production sites. It can have an effect everywhere. So this is how we think everyone is feeling on this call. The people who are tasked with taking this cool AI use case and then making something happen with it. So right now, the sentiment is it's this lush AI harvest. You're very excited. You think, okay, this is going to all work out great. The use case is superb. Like, let's just go make it happen. So we came up with these two use cases to talk through. And so when you're thinking about the use case that you have, think about some of the qualities and the structure, and really analyze what this use case is about. And we're going to go through these two together. So employee onboarding and internal chat with voice of your competitor. So let's start on this employee onboarding. And Hayden, I think you brought this one to the table. If you can kick us off with, what is this use case? Who is it affecting? And what kind of qualities do you see surrounding this with how to get started?
Sure. So as a people leader myself, who has built several teams, there is a lot of information a new employee has to know. Everything from, how to link up their computers, various HR policies, like it's a lot to manage. And it's also spread across various parts in Workday. Often, you have a different system for filing your expense reports. There's often an internal learning platform. And then within your business unit or your team, there might be business unit specific SharePoint sites. There may be team documentation in Confluence or Notion. All that information is spread throughout, and it's both disorienting and a fire hose for those new employees. At the same time, as a team leader, you also want to be able to provide all of that to employees and help them navigate that process with as less stress as you can.
And Hayden,
So
don't forget, Hayden, we're distributed and remote at the same time. So just let's add that to the
true,
mix. Yeah.
true, and and that means different time zones. So, if you're on the West Coast, your new hire might be up for 3 hours before you are, and like they may be struggling with something before you even come online. So in terms of a potential LLM use case, you know, the base minimum I think we could talk about would be something like an interactive chatbot to answer all of those little questions that come up with when a new employee joins. Something that is trained on the employee handbook, the travel policy, the security policy, going back to that BU and team documentation, SharePoint sites, um, readmes for if you're working on projects on GitHub and, internally or externally, readmes for how to get things set up, even your product documentation, if you're working on a specific, set of hardware or a specific, software platform, having that aggregated in one place. That can be complicated because that's going to be in so many different places and so many different formats. You're going to have PDFs. You're going to have SharePoint sites to scrape. Maybe you have videos that you want this chatbot to be able to gather data from. You're going to need to do speech to text and then, chunk that text. And you're talking about multiple sources of data all feeding into this experience. And then how do you maintain it over time? Now, I think I've alluded to some of the benefits here, which would be to reduce that new employee frustration, relieve the administrative burden. I think going beyond that kind of base chatbot use case, even with all its complexities of like getting all the data in and maintaining it over time, potentially the ability to tailor it specifically to roles and, even levels. Like, a VP is going to have different questions than an IC. They're going to have different needs. But
Hayden,
ultimately,
I remember that whole tailoring part. It's like I remember when I first came into HPE and there was a almost a travel moment. And the one thing I don't like the most is expense reports. And
My
so
gosh,
the idea of having to travel really early
expletives
means
around
that I
that.
have to learn the expense report system within 30 days. And oh my gosh, that probably gave me more anxiety than anything
Yeah,
else.
I already got triggered and have some expletives right there, Hayden, on expense reporting. So
yeah.
By the way, guys,
Fix that.
I'm feeling especially vulnerable because I'm Audrey's manager. So I actually had to get Audrey's onboarding done. So if I was to ask Audrey my grade or our collective grade, what would that be, Audrey?
Yeah. It's like, no, don't make me travel if I have to fill out an expense report. Oh my goodness. So yeah, if there's a shortcut to that, and like you said, Hayden, the whole specialized to roles too. Like some of the things that you might need to do and figure out quickly in the first 30 days could be so different amongst roles and the kind of information that you're looking for within the company. And I think it speaks to a little bit of a broader use case even of a company knowing thyself and how do you actually equip the people you're onboarding to come up to speed on your own business faster? So, I mean, that's something that's so pervasive, right? The longer someone is in an organization, the more know-how they have because of the seasonalities, products that almost were but weren't, projects people worked on. So there's the hard-coded documents, and then there's kind of the unstructured data of it all, the project folders that were archived, and the access for employees to say, give me a history on my organization in the past 5 years. Bring me up to speed quickly.
You have to also
Yeah,
challenge though, just for this use case. Sorry, Anthony, you have to challenge the norms because let's say if it's employee onboarding, there's probably multiple business units. HR is involved in that, and you have to set up some false negatives or false positives. Go and challenge that and say, okay, well, if I built this system, you as HR go ask it a question. Is it answering it right? That you think it's going to give the answer to the employees. A lot of people don't even do that. Set this up just to see if you think the information you have is correct. So you're really challenging them a little bit, right? A lot of people think, I'm just going to put it all stated in here. I'll be able to ask the question, get the valid answer. It's like, well, no, half the time. I just went through some NVIDIA courses with my own private RAG and found out all the documentation shared had nothing in the tests. Surprise. Like, go do that to see, like, is it even in here? And test yourself, validate yourself as an organization. So sorry, Anthony, it's just
That's a good point. I think a lot of these use cases are an exercise in, data excavation and uncovering what organizations have, and there's what are you sitting on and what are you not sitting on. I think it becomes pretty obvious, like you said, Chad, when you realize that maybe you thought you had data, but it's not really in a usable format. And it's even a little challenging for some of the AI pipelines to still use that data
But just to break that down, you may discover, oh, we thought that was getting updated in this process, and you find out that process has actually been broken all along. Like that data was never actually getting updated. So that's what I mean. Go challenge your own assumptions out there if you build it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I think there's potential there.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think there's potential there. And it's something, Audrey, you alluded to, is so let's say you have a great onboarding chatbot, and it's there for one-time questions to help that employee navigate the wealth of information. But I think going one step further, I think one thing we can think about is a chatbot that follows the employee and has some sort of awareness that is trained in of a 30, 60, 90 tailored to that role. And is not only part of the onboarding, but that employee's ongoing learning, not just of like, okay, how do I connect my YubiKey to connect to the company VPN, right? But like 30 days later, hey, have you populated your goals for this quarter? And 60 days later, have you made your first contributions? And, have you collaborated as an IC dev, have you, where are you with, getting comfortable with your team's sprint process? So again, going back to my first questions, we're just scratching the surface with like the baseline concept. And I think long-term, it's going to be really interesting where these are going to go. Anthony, you had a question?
No, I was going to go exactly there, but you didn't take it as far as I was going to take it. Which again,
go for it.
Designing to these use cases. This is a great example, right? And I'm going to bring my wellness companion app back into vogue here. We're always onboarding. We're always either being onboarded into a new learning system, into a new business model, into a new tech, and we're consistently learning at the company. We're also helping folks on board as well. So there's this symmetry here always of a companion app that's not a moment in time, right? It's taking place over the length of my experience with this employer. And I think that's the challenge, Hayden, is that, how do we think about the mental model to design for something like this? And is the onboarding experience, i.e. the first 30, 60 days, sort of step one in, a much more holistic view of what my employee experience needs to be. And then we sort of triangulate around those use cases that way, as opposed to solving for a specific use case, a point in time, and then it doesn't have more of a robust, implementation or design. Any thoughts to that? Or
go ahead, Hayden.
It's a challenge because a lot of this is going to be, there's a baseline set of knowledge that's required to build these chatbots, and there's a lot of infrastructure required to not only assemble and pre-process the information to fine-tune or supplement an LLM with that information. But then it requires true ingenuity and creativity to then, make that a longer term tool that can work with the employee throughout their entire career. The cool thing is like we have some of the open source tooling that could help make that happen here at HPE in terms of maintaining that data, keeping that data updated, and then the expertise here to help users and customers build those solutions.
So let's jump over into the internal chat with voice of your competitor. And Chad, you're going to have to tease this one out for me a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody's got a competitor out there. The only kind of, I think, trying to plan this out is they have to kind of have some public accessible information. So if they have that, you can build, these question and answering solutions to go through, and you can use it for training, possibly to use for your own competitive intelligence. Right? If I was to put this information in, this is my response. What's their response? Maybe to a similar product or solution. So the caveat there, I said, right, is it has to be some publicly available information from your competitor to be able to go build this. But that's exactly what it is. So we had somebody come up with the idea just last week. It's like, hey, let's go build this up with one of our big competitors for HPE. You can guess a name out there. They respond like them. So it's something we're starting to look at. We just started this week. It's like, okay, what all could we load? What's relevant? Like, what's the overall like corpus of that company? What would they sound like? And then also some of the technology responses, because there's a lot of published information out there from folks. When you look at technology,
Kind of the
so
reverse, right? So it's like on one side, we've got this know thyself from your internal data and then know thy competitors.
Yeah,
And that's your
great.
external.
Yeah, great point. We could just test ourselves with that. Forget even bringing him in. But if this question came in, can we even answer it?
Yeah, exactly. I want to encourage everyone. So if you haven't pulled up the chat yet, to go ahead and click on the chat button. And we want to hear some of the use cases that you are all tasked with. So go ahead and type them into the chat and we can see what cool AI use cases everyone has kind of come to the table with. Maybe you came up with it, maybe, maybe it was HR, maybe it was some other team internally that you're working with that said, hey, go make this a reality. We'd love to hear it. And it's great for you to share as well with other people on the call. We kind of know more together than we know individually, so we can share. So we've got sentiment analysis engine, PDFs, OCR, NLP, a lot of note summarization for medical records. This one comes up a lot. Whatever the format really is, I'd say it's
And I can
summarizes
personally
information.
speak that I thought it wasn't good for translation of those handwritten notes. If it can read my writing, it's golden. It's
Yeah.
totally. Also, although most of this stuff is digital now in the medical records field, right? You go into any kind of office, they got a little computer there and they're taking digital notes. So it's not like there's a lot of manual handwriting, but definitely very, very, very good for that.
Hey, we
And
used to say
I will
you
say,
didn't need to know cursive anymore, but now maybe you
yeah,
can.
yeah.
You don't even need that.
You won't have a calculator up.
Yeah.
But
Let's see.
what else is
Video
there?
surveillance. Okay, video. This is a really big use case too. I think this one comes up. I've heard it in surveillance. The one that's been around for a long time is like in manufacturing use cases, defects. Anytime you're looking for a defect or something that's out of norm for whatever your scene is, whether that's an assembly line or a grocery store aisle or something like that, it's having eyes on moving pictures. Oh yeah, I like this one, a chatbot that knows who everyone in the org is, their role, and what they know. Amen.
God, we could use that. I mean, I know everyone could probably use that depending on, especially the association.
Yeah, I know. There's what's interesting about that one, thank you, Malcolm, is that so, there's all these kind of Active Directory systems with information, but we use all these other tools like Slack and stuff where people put, hey, I like mountain biking, and this is where I live actually, and not just a state or a geography. And you learn so much more about your colleagues that way, but you need to look in 5 different places, right, to find that information. What else we have? Deep fake analysis. That one's important.
There's starting to come some tools out there. I think that's going to be hard though, because it's going to be Like, so for example, if you guys haven't seen, if you go to ai.nvidia.com, they have something to go review if it's been generated, if it's an image or text, or I'm sorry, if it's an image or video.
Mhm.
They just launched. It's kind of nice. So I hope that's coming from the leaders in the industry to help with that analysis. I think it's going to be pretty hard to build your own. I mean, trust me, I totally like the use case because I think there's going to be personal AI malware coming against everybody,
Yeah.
which is holding your personality hostage. That's what's on the horizon. We're heard some folks being held hostage, but yeah, deepfake. I think we've got to make sure that some of the people that are building these models and even helping to support the models getting built help demystify that.
Yeah, even for video too, right? I mean, like we're all real here. I can guarantee you, but there's deep fake. I heard a use case of interviewers. It was not an actual real person interviewing for the job. That kind of stuff. And the technology is not as good. The person could still detect it and know that that wasn't a real person because
Ah,
something's off.
yeah.
But I mean, that's sophisticated. So that's gonna be really good.
Like,
So just moving moving along. So we're now at this moment. So we've got this cool AI use case, and now we're hit with the reality of now what? And so I want to put up a poll onto the screen, and it will ask all of you what your main challenge is. And there's some categories here for you to consider. And if it's really none of these, feel free to throw in the chat if you have some other kind of specific challenge that you're faced with. So some of these for the document summarization, document analysis, RAG enhanced LLM for TAC. What do we deep fake analysis? What are you stuck on right now?
maybe while y'all are filling out that poll too, if you in one or two words, Florian, and Matthew, and Mark, and Aaron, I am kind of curious where these use cases are coming from. Are you seeing them coming like top down, like leadership, because they heard some analysts say they need this use case, or are they being more crowdsourced in organizations, from teams, or something else? But I'm just kind of curious where they're coming from, these use cases, because I hope it's the latter, right? Um, a lot of times these folks that create these industry use cases out there, your Gartners and folks that do a great job of getting this data together, are not quite always 100% right of what boots on the ground is doing. So if you get any time to just post, just to, coming from top down, coming from industry analysts, coming from, internal crowdsource, our own ideas, that's be great to know.
Mhm.
I like
Bottom of the food
Florian.
chain attorney. That's the best use case, Aaron. Love it.
I like Florian's use case. They see.
I was going to comment on that. I've gone through that with a parent, and you can do power of attorneys, you can do medical power of attorneys, you can do all this stuff, and then you find out, well, in your state, if you have a house, you got to go to the county and file this document, and then you're protected from the estate. And it's like, oh my gosh, can somebody just not create a tool that goes out to all these publicly data sources and says, how do I set up estate planning for my state? Right. I mean, if we're talking the states here, right? But any country, any province, like, come on, we have the technology now. Like, I love that. Like, I've been through that, and luckily I did all the steps. And literally, we were closing on my mother's house after she passed away. This is just a little bleak story. We closed, and I was literally praying, like, okay, do I have the right documents? I have no idea. You're like, I think I do. Everyone's, whew, I did, but it's just like, and it
Well,
changes.
Florian,
So back to
if Florian's speaking to, how do you sharpen sensibility as well, right? In terms of as you age, and how do you translate all this complicated stuff to someone and meet them where they're at? And what you're talking about is this other thing. Ultimately, that has to interface with an antiquated world where these things actually live. And how do you have access to that data set? And then how do you enforce some sort of act on that data set when it sits in some county, registrar somewhere in under someone's desk, right? So
an antiquated world that is hostile to these things in many
hostile?
ways. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think they're uncomfortable. I'm going to come back to my word. I like to think people are more uncomfortable than hostile, but I'll just leave that out there. Audrey.
Okay, let's see our results here. Oh, wow. Okay. A lot more balanced, really. I kind of thought that one category would maybe, or a couple, one or two would maybe stand out, but not quite. If I put
It's
my
actually
like,
it's actually really promising that lack of executive leadership support is so low. Like,
mhm,
Big change since
I
last
think,
year.
right?
Huge
Because
change.
there's so much skepticism and fear. And I think as like best practices have promulgated, and I think every organization these days now has an AI committee of some sort to manage the compliance. There's just less fear and panic, and executives are leaning in on this and starting to see the use cases and business benefits of leveraging AI.
mhm. Yeah, so some of the biggies up there: infrastructure, skill set, data management, and engineering.
Yeah, Hayden, we saw it with sustainability, where we're incentivizing our executives, right? Literally, bottom line W-2 stuff to come forward and integrate, more sensible, sustainable solutions. I'm wondering if we're seeing the same thing around AI as well, incentivizing them to sort of push the envelope on the tech.
Mhm. Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, if there is a lack of executive leadership support, that's not the barrier, then hopefully that opens up and removes barriers for the data management problem and data engineering. We always talk so much about, data gravity and the cost to move information, duplicate information, store information long term. Like, I kind of feel like this is the moment where the fruits of the labor are coming to bear. All of the data that companies kept, either maybe they had to, but then they kept for this moment in time where we could do something so sophisticated with it that you didn't have to write a query for, even that you could use a chat interface for. Like, as someone who hoards information, like, I'm that person that's probably still has my high school physics notebook on the shelf. Like, I have just
Wow.
been waiting for this moment to upload all of my life's documents so I can have a duplication of my brain that remembers better than I do, right?
Yeah.
Wellness app.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anthony, I'm seeing a
Okay.
bunch of startup ideas right here. You should call this a startup jam. I mean, navigating college admissions, right? Part of
Yeah.
your wellness,
I'm
part of the legal
I'm
side
knee
of
deep in
wellness.
that one. Yeah, I'm knee deep in that one. That's a whole other webinar we should do on just that, the college admission stuff.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mhm.
So it's okay. We've got a lot of use cases here, and we're at the now what phase. So how do we get started? Um, let's help break these down a little bit, and let's collectively think, what's the next step? Or what's the skill I need to look into or acquire? How do I take the next move?
Oh, fantastic.
So a few of the things I saw, um, lack of skill set, and this is coming from my kind of dev tooling, hands-on experience in the field. Um, we see a lot of AI, ML, in Python, but we have a lot of developers who are coming from ecosystems, around Java, .NET. Maybe they're doing cloud native already with Go. The whole, C++. I would focus on exploring the ML tooling for your preferred programming language. And that doesn't have to be Python. There are great libraries and extensions for getting started, building your proof of concept in the platform and the tooling you're already familiar with. So you don't, if you are a Java pro, you don't necessarily need to go learn, Python. Like, there are libraries out there that can assist you. And interestingly enough, I saw a question come up right here in the chat. What if you're not a programmer? There are actually a fair number of really good, what I would consider low code or no code solutions for working with, training LLMs or fine tuning a data set. We have things in the works here at HPE. One, interesting place to get to start is if you're familiar with Visual Studio Code, there is the AI training toolkit that lets you train and fine-tune models in an extension in your editor. No code required. So leverage your existing skill set. If you're not a developer, look at those low code and no code solutions, to get started. Another issue I saw raised on the chat was confusion where to start. Do I start on-prem? Do I start in the cloud? My recommendation to people getting started in this space is actually to consider starting small. You do not necessarily need a 40 billion parameter LLM that's going to take you days, weeks, or months to fine tune, to spike your project, and actually even potentially get something into prod. An SLM is likely sufficient for about 70 to 90% of what you're looking for in many cases, particularly if you're then fine tuning it on a corpus of additional data using RAG. And some of those are as little as 3 and 4 billion parameters. And they're just an easier way to get started.
You bring up a good point there, Hayden, with that one. I think that there's, you hear it it's even in the news, right? Like everyone actually knows the numbers of the parameter models that are being released in some of these large scale, right? Like it hits mainline news.
Right.
Then you go on to, artificial intelligence.ai and you look at all the speeds, right? Or like you're looking at the ML perf speeds to say, oh, this one has so many tokens per second versus the cost. And all of a sudden, before you've even done everything, I feel like you're sitting there trying to select the best model. And it's just a complicated entry point. It feels a little overwhelming.
Yeah. There's some pretty common models, to start with, but you don't necessarily need to pick the biggest one. And by going with a smaller model, something like a smaller Mistral model or the Phi 3 series, it doesn't matter where you start because you can start working on your workstation. Like it's performant enough to infer and do some fine tuning with RAG, on a decently powered workstation, and then you can scale up and move it to the cloud after experimentation. So that kind of addresses the where do I start in terms of placement? Start small, locally, and then scale up. Then the other thing I saw highlighted from the poll was challenges with data management. And I don't think you should be super concerned with scaling up as you begin your initial explorations, spike a POC and, experiment with different models and experiment with different RAG training approaches. But eventually you are going to need to think about scaling inferencing. But you're also going to have to think about scaling your data management and collection because you're going to want to keep your model fresh. Going back to our use case of the onboarding app, policies change. Maybe you want the onboarding app to have quarterly business results as business priorities shift over time or new products are announced. So as you get down your journey, and start thinking about, okay, where are we actually going to host this? Where does it make sense to host? Where is it, where are we compliant to host this? But also, how are we going to scale the data management that we're feeding into the LLM that we're hosting? It's a consideration to keep in mind as you kind of whiteboard out the entire process.
Chad, what do you think of these three? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna
point.
summarize this a little higher level, which is because I talk to IT teams as well as developers, and so there's a couple things. One, where do you always start? Yes, go small, but go local. Like my laptop. Like I start here when I do my use cases. I'm working on a text messaging AI use case right now, just to text to get information. I just do that locally right now. So start locally. Go wide. Even a year ago, we didn't have the availability. I mean, that's the second one. Audrey, is go wide. And what I mean by that is everyone just like, oh, LLM and Llama or GPT, like that's what we should use. I'm like, God, no, don't use that. If you didn't see on Hugging Face, they hit 1 million models that they're tracking on Hugging Face last week. There are so many other great models out there. And now there's a lot of great tools out there that you can go test them very, very quickly. You don't set up anything. You go to somebody else's website, you plug in something, plug in some data, plug in a question, and you could run through about 15 models in a minute. So that's what I mean by go wide. You don't even have to set up any of the testing. And then look at trying to become an AI bridge in your organization. And what I mean by that is we've got these software developers that are very separate from the IT folks, and you need to come and find a kumbaya moment, come together and have a conversation around this, because that's actually what I find doing with a lot of our customers today is helping them kind of be that software bridge for the AI world. But somebody take the lead there. To trust me, anybody in your organization will love it. So go local, go wide, and then be becoming that AI bridge advocate. So when you do want to get these into production, it's not a surprise to anyone.
Mm-hmm. Any tips, Anthony? What are you seeing out there?
I was going to start with that last one, Chad. It's like building a startup. I'll come back to that. You go find team members that complement you. Like go to the functional groups, not just IT, but you want to build an onboarding app, Hayden, go to HR, find a cohort in HR that understands the domain and wants to solve for it in a different way. So I think go partner really internally, and I love that bridge notion, Chad. I think when we talk to a lot of our customers, this notion of building this operating model across the organization, so you have not just core stakeholders, but the core use case now can be supported at different levels, which ultimately, and I think the second point here I want to make, Audrey, is you kind of have to sort of define that why moment, right? That business case is critical. And we want to throw tech at this, and I love talking about why language models are accelerating our ability to look at disparate data differently. But ultimately, when we automate that, is it actually accelerating decision making? What's that why in using this tech? And if we're pairing that with this bridge into a functional group, call it HR in this case, I think it's a really good starting point to speak to this in terms of actually moving a particular problem forward, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just to give some guys, if you've been in the market for a while, we had the same challenges when virtualization came along. You had database guys that said, "I'm not going to virtualize," and then they went, "Oh, okay, I'll do test dev," and then they said, "Well, I can't do production because you can't scale it, you can't do DR, you can't do these things," and then the technologies came along. It still took them a while to be comfortable with that. So there was even this kind of virtualization bridge that happened there between the IT and the application holders. In this case, you're talking about database, right? They're still an application holder. And they even saw that in the cloud market, right? The comfortability of being able to use all the different tool sets in the cloud. So it's happening again. It's going to take folks to step up and get to that why moment. Be your AI advocacy folks to build those bridges, and use everything out there. My gosh, we're in the free period of AI. You're gonna cost more money in a couple more years, y'all. Seriously, we're in the free period. Go out there and use it.
Yeah, that's awesome, Chad. Yeah, it's a good way to end. We're kind of at the top of the hour here. Yeah, this is the free period.
It is.
Go out there, learn.
Just wait for
grab
the
what
2
you
years.
can.
They're going to have completely different cost models. I promise you.
So in our last, just there's a quick poll at the end of our session that's popped up. I want to give our panelists just 30 seconds each here. It's a rapid fire question of just what you're learning, and we'll send it in the after session review too. So you'll have links on all the things that we talked about. So if you weren't taking notes, don't worry about it. But a quick just what you're learning right now and why it's interesting. When we can follow up on it later. Hayden?
I am working with cross-architecture models using the Onyx runtime that are agnostic to operating system, architecture, GPUs, just thinking as we move from monolithic ML workflows and start pushing ML to apps on desktops, laptops, the edge, I can build one application that leverages ML, and Onyx ensures it runs well anywhere, regardless of OS, regardless of GPU, regardless of CPU. I find that really empowering as someone creating endpoint applications, leveraging ML.
That's awesome. And that's Onyx, ONNX.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yep. And I have a sample Git. I have a sample GitHub repo I'll share.
Okay, great. Okay. But thanks for the leave behind, Hayden. That's a good one. Chad, what are you learning?
Right now I'm going back to school and learning JavaScript. Was never a fan, but the reason I'm doing that is I'm building, like I said, a text messaging chatbot almost for RAG, for content relevant information for our organization. Don't worry, all the data I'm using are publicly available data right now. But there's a whole generation there that they're used to texting, and haven't seen anybody do it. So building out, working with a messaging provider to pull in the text messages. That was the easy part. Now the part is what are the responses we want to come out of it? So
sounds like you got a startup right there. And Anthony, what are you learning?
Well, I'll pivot to my children. I continue to learn from what are two college age children now, right? One in particular is actually in a math and data science program, and they made her English grade critical to her acceptance. So it's kind of interesting to look at these multidisciplinary environments now and how you bring this together. And I'm starting to read this book. If everybody hasn't read it, I highly recommend it, called How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. And he's sort of this, if you're going to build a digital twin of a human being that has like every sensibility all in one person, right, from creativity to science-based, he's a great role model. And he talks about all our knowledge, right, comes from the origins of our perception. So I'm starting to think about how to combine multiple senses now into how we build things and make it more ambient, right? Back to my wellness app. I'm always wanting to build the next world's best wellness app.
Yeah, sounds like we need like a hackathon for these use cases and book club.
in a book club.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. We are right at the top of the hour. I just want to recap on how we're getting started here. So what we went through today was selecting and analyzing your use case. We dived in. Don't be afraid to dissect it. Like, kind of turn it over and think about, what are the challenges and the business outcomes, and then investigate your capabilities. Hayden brought up some of these very tangible things that you can do to identify your own tool sets and approaches on how to start. And then, get to your proof of concept, like Chad said. Open your laptop and start small, qualify something out, and take a look at your data sources. And we can help. We're HPE, obviously, we've got products and services that can help you out. You can take this plan that we just talked through and bring it to your account team, talk it through with them as well. And if you just want to throw your hands up, professional services is there for you to walk you through a very professional and advised way to.
Let's not forget quick, let's not forget our big announcement at Discover, right? In
Yes.
terms of the private cloud AI, and it was a fully engineered system in collaboration with NVIDIA. But and the goal is just, how to get started quickly with a number of our customers that just need a starting point. And I'll come back to that in subsequent webinars as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we'll provide all those links and resources too, so all of you can follow up after this session. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time today.
Okay. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you later.